Send a notice out to everybody. And check to make sure we are online or on Facebook. Yes, we are. Okay. Looks like everything's good. Let me get the guitar and we'll be ready to go. Okay. Hey. So usually about half the week I'm here in Raleigh. Raleigh is where the big university is, and we're cultivating quite a few students in Krishna consciousness, youth. And I know I am not a youth, but at least the soul is. Okay, let's chant Radhe Govinda. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Radhe Radhe, Govinda, Govinda, Radhe, Radhe Radhe, Govinda, Govinda, Radhe, Radhe Radhe, Govinda, Govinda, Radhe, Govinda, Govinda, Radhe. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya, Prabhupada, Jaya, Prabhupada, Haribo, 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 Nichako, Haribo, Haribo, Haribo. Jai Om Vishnupad, Paramahansa, Paramahansa, all Sutata, Satashi, Shimad, is divine grace Abhaya, Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti, Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha, Shiva Sri Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopika Shayam Kunda, Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Mathuranam Ki Jai, Jagannath Swami Ki Jai, Yamunamaya Ki Jai, Srimati Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. Okay. So, Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharani Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschachate Satarni. So, Om Gana Tividanda Shah Gananjana Shalakya Jakshur Urmeditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha. So I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual masters, Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. And Srila Prabhupada has saved me from the ocean of nescience and enlightened me with the torchlight of knowledge. Let me just check the audio settings on this. Okay, I need to be a little louder. Set it a little louder. Okay. Okay, so we're ready to go. So we're going to continue reading from the Sri Caitanya Caritamrta, reading from the 15th chapter of the Madhya Lila, text 71, beginning 71, and we're going to read about an amazing pastime, as all the pastimes are in the Caitanya Caritamrta. Let's start. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. All right, just get set up here. Okay, here we go. So, yesterday we left off just at the beginning of this particular story about Raghava Chaitanya, Raghava Pandit. Actually, Raghava Pandit. Yeah. Okay, just hear the story. So, this is about his offering of coconuts and his desire to keep everything clean and pure for the deities. So, as Prabhupada said, that deity worship means cleanliness and punctuality. Everything is secondary to that. Prabhupada never even mentioned rituals too much. He said cleanliness, punctuality, and also said nice offerings of bhoga for the deities. Okay, so let us go ahead. Vatite katashita rikshe laksha laksha pala tatapi shunena yata mishta narikela. Although he already has hundreds of trees and millions of fruits, he is still very eager to hear about the place where sweet coconuts are available. Now, the reason he's very eager to hear about the place where sweet coconuts are available is that he wants to please Krishna and offer these to Krishna. Not that he's thinking of himself, where can I taste sweet coconuts? He's actually thinking, I want to offer Krishna some variety of bhoga. And when Krishna takes it, it becomes prasadam. So he just thinks about it. This is almost like a very lusty man who's in love. And he's always thinking, what can I get for my beloved? So he looks all around, goes to all the jewelry stores or wherever he goes. And he's just thinking all the time, what can I get for her? So when a devotee is in love with Krishna, the same consciousness is there because he is thinking all the time, where can I get something nice for Krishna? What can I get for Krishna? And so therefore he employs something called yukta vairagya. Yukta vairagya means the renunciation of using things in this world to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So here, he is very eager to hear about the place where sweet coconuts are available. So eka eka palere murya diya chari chari pana dasha krosha haite anaya karya yatana. He collects coconuts with great endeavor from a place 20 miles away, and he pays 4 panas each for them, 20 miles away. I mean, how many of us would be willing to get in our cars and drive 20 miles away if we heard some nice offering was there for the deities? I don't think we would. But when you're talking about coconuts from so far away, 20 miles walking, yes, they walked. Let's see what the Bengali is for the mileage. Dasha krosha, yeah, that's about 20 miles. Text 73. Pratidina panchashata palacholana shushitala karite rake jale duvaina. Every day, 5 to 7 coconuts are clipped and put into water to keep cool. Bogera samaya puna chuli samskari Krishna samarpana kare mukha chidra kori. At the time of offering bhoga, the coconuts are again clipped and cleansed. After holes are made in them at the top, they are offered to Lord Krishna. Krishna say narikela jala panakari kabu shunya palarakena kabu jala bari. Lord Krishna drinks the juice from these coconuts, and sometimes the coconuts are left drained of juice. At other times, the coconuts remain filled with juice. So this is like a miracle, because usually when we offer to Krishna on the altar, he leaves everything over for us. And if you go to take the plate away from the deities and you see everything gone, that means a special miracle has occurred. And Krishna actually has directly taken everything in order to reinforce your faith for him. That reminds me of the story of Raghunandana. Raghunandana was instructed by his father to take care of the deities, and he didn't know any of the mantras, so all he did was cry, eat, 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 eat. And he didn't know that Krishna eats with his ears, he eats with his eyes. He doesn't necessarily have to take everything. But he didn't know that, so he cried and cried and cried. And some stories say that he threatened the deities, and then Krishna got down and ate everything on his plate. So that happens sometimes. And when Raghunandana's father, Mukundadas, saw that, he understood that his son was actually a better devotee than him. Jalashunya paladeki pandita rashita palamangi shashikare satpatra purita. When Raghava Pandit sees that the juice has been drunk from the coconuts, he is very pleased. He then breaks the coconuts, takes out the pulp, and puts it on another plate. Wow. Shasha samarpana kari bhakire dhyayana shashakana krishna kare shunya bhajana. After offering the pulp, he meditates outside the temple door. In the meantime, Lord Krishna, having eaten the pulp, leaves the plate empty. Kabushasha kanapunag patrabare shamse shradabare panditera prema sindhu base. Sometimes after eating the pulp, Krishna fills the plate again with new pulp. In this way, the faith of Raghava Pandit increases, and he floats in an ocean of love. Wow. Ekadina palatasha samskara kariya bhoga lagaite sevaka ailalana. One day it so happened that about 10 coconuts were properly clipped and brought by a servant to offer to the deity. Avasara nagi hoya bilamba haila palapatra hate sevaka dwareta ragila. When the coconuts were brought, there was little time to offer them because it was already late. The servant, holding the container of coconuts, remained standing at the door. Dvarera uparabite taino hata dina seate palachunila pandita dekila. Raghava Pandit then saw that the servant touched the ceiling above the door and then touched the coconuts with the same hand. Pandita kai dware lokakare gatayate tarapada duliudi lage uparabite. Raghava Pandit then said, people are always coming and going through that door. The dust from their feet blows up and touches the ceiling. Sevite hatadiya palapara shila Krishna yogya nahi pala apavitra haila. After touching the ceiling above the door, you have touched the coconuts. Now they are no longer fit to be offered to Krishna because they are contaminated. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur states that Raghava Pandit was not simply a crazy fellow suffering from some cleansing mania. Of course, in the material world, we call that obsessive compulsive, but it wasn't like that. He wanted to please the Lord with the best possible offering. Cleanliness. I remember when I first started cooking for the deities, I was instructed that when you go in the kitchen, and if you touch anything other than the preparation, Like if you touch your clothes, for example, when to speak of touch your hair, touch any part of your body, you immediately clean your hands again. I was taught that it should be like the operating room, where the doctors put their hands up and the nurse puts the gloves on them. And they certainly don't touch their face or don't touch the body or anything like that. It's extremely sterile. So I was taught that that's actually the standard for deity worship. If we want to please Krishna, keep everything extremely pure, extremely sterile, and keep the kitchen, especially the kitchen, but actually the whole temple, revolutionary clean. And that was my training in Krishna consciousness, and I always did that. I remember sometimes when other people were cooking, I would clean behind them. And Prabhupada was so much into cleanliness that even if there was a pot that had a little soot on the bottom or a black spot on the bottom that was baked in on the bottom, we're not talking about the inside of the pot. The inside of the pot could have been completely clean and shiny. But even in the bottom of the pot, if there was anything that indicated it had been used for cooking, Prabhupada would say, it's dirty, you should clean it. And the devotees had to just scrub the pot. So this is actually the standard of cleanliness that pleases Radha and Krishna. So Prabhupada explains, he did not belong to the mundane world. This is Raghava Pandit. In lower consciousness, accepting something to be spiritual when it is actually material is called Boma Ijadi. That means considering your birthplace or the earth to be worshipable, or mundane things to be worshipable. Raghava Pandit was an eternal servant of Krishna, and everything he saw was related to the service of the Lord. He was always absorbed in the transcendental thought of how he could always serve Krishna with everything. Sometimes neophytes, devotees on the lower platform, try to imitate Raghava Pandit on the platform of material purity and impurity. Such imitation will not help anyone. As explained in the Caitanya Caritamrta, Lila 4, 174, Bhadra Bhadra Vastugyana Nahika Prakrite. On the transcendental platform, there's no higher or lower, pure or impure. On the material platform, distinction is made between good and bad. But on the spiritual platform, everything is of the same quality. Vaite Bhadra Bhadra Jnana Sabha Mano Dharma E Malahi Manda E Sabha Brahma. In the material world, conceptions of good and bad are all mental speculations. Therefore, saying this is good and that is bad is all a mistake. It's from the Caitanya Caritamrta Madhya, Lila, 4th chapter, text 176. So, of course, we are aware on one platform of good and bad things in this material world, and we try to be as good as possible. Why? Because that's the mode of goodness. By good, I mean things in the mode of goodness. Because being in the mode of goodness means that one will be able to proceed very nicely, concentrate on spiritual life, make progress. And if one is in the mode of passion, ignorance, one's mind will be disturbed. Of course, in passion, one's mind is disturbed by what? Acquiring things. I want more and more and more. And in ignorance, your mind is disturbed by, I want to sleep. Oh, leave me alone, like that. Anyway, so we want the mind to be peaceful. So in one sense, being good or bad things in this world is just like an illusion. But on the other side, being aware of good and bad will help us progress. So we have to understand this particular verse in the right context. Good and bad, one has to discriminate. Of course, there's also a spiritual good and bad. Spiritual means those things that are conducive to spiritual life, and that's good. And bad means those things which are not conducive, because those are the first two surrendering principles taught by Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. That, what are the first principles? That, first of all, to accept everything favorable, that's good, and to reject everything unfavorable. So, in that respect, we have good and bad, but not in the respect of, that's a bad person or a good person in terms of material consideration, or that's a pretty person, that's an ugly person. This is all a mistake to see like that. Like if you say, oh, that's a good birth or a bad birth, apart from the spirituality of the situation. If you say, oh, someone's born in a rich family, it's a good birth, and born in a poor family, it's a bad birth, but that's an illusion. Because the poor family, the person born in the poor family, may actually have more impetus for spiritual life, may have more association in spiritual life, so it may actually be good spiritually. So we have to distinguish when we're talking about good and bad, whether we're talking about the material sphere or we're talking about the spiritual sphere or the spiritual progress. Text 84. Etabali palapele prachira lagya ache pavitra prema seva jagat jiniya. Such is the service of Raghava Pandit. He did not accept the coconuts, but threw them over the wall. His service is purely based on unalloyed love, and it conquers the whole world. So he wasn't thinking of good and bad in terms of his own sense gratification. It's a nice house, it's a bad house. He was thinking about what pleases Krishna. And while one is serving Krishna in this material world, one should offer the best to Krishna. Of course, the best is actually defined by Krishna himself. It's not that you define what is the best. For example, when Prabhupada first started the temple in San Francisco, Prabhupada said you should offer the best thing to Krishna, and some people offer their old clothes because that was the best thing they had. Of course, Krishna accepted the offering as devotion, but really that's not what we want to do. If you want to offer the best thing to someone, you got to find out what they like. It's important. Devotional service means to do what Krishna likes, not, oh, Krishna, I'm offering to you what I like. No. You offer to Krishna what he likes. How do you know what Krishna likes? You have to ask your spiritual master, or ask some sadhu, or ask the Vedic literatures. What does Krishna like to eat? What does Krishna like to wear? Just for example, Krishna likes to play a flute, right? So you may think, oh, I like guitars better than flutes. Okay, so let me put a guitar in the hands of Radha and Krishna and have Krishna playing the guitar. I mean, think people can get wild like that. Like there was one temple that thought, Krishna really likes the things that are surrounding Christmas. And so in this particular temple, they dressed up Krishna and Radharani like Santa Claus and Mrs. Santa Claus, and surrounded them, put them, red and white outfits, and had a little beanie on the top, and somehow or other surrounded them with something that looked like a sled, and they had imitation reindeers on the altar. Could you imagine that? And so there was Mr. and Mrs. Santa Claus on the altar instead of Radha and Krishna. Of course, Radha and Krishna riding a sled, imitate. This is avidi purvakam. It is not the proper process. Krishna does not ride on a sled. Well, maybe he does sometimes, but not Radha and Krishna Vrindavan. It's actually really ridiculous to celebrate different holidays and to have Krishna manifest in the deity form the different holidays. I mean, you can think of so many different religious holidays. Or I said, let's take July 4th and have Krishna dress as one of the revolutionary soldiers or something like that. It's completely insane. It is not Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness means find out what Krishna likes, how he likes to dress, what he likes to eat, and then you offer it to him. Like if you're serving someone, like if someone's serving me, of course that's one of the reasons I don't let too many people serve me, because I know what I like. better than anyone else. And people have this idea. They think they should know, or they know what I like. I remember I have one disciple who's always telling me, you would really like this, Guru Maharaj. Who's telling me what I would really like. And I say, because I have a need for autonomy, how do you know? I would not really like it. Don't tell me what I like. So Krishna's like that too. Don't tell him what he likes. He knows what he likes. Don't force him to eat what you like. I mean, if you have informal deity worship in your home, yes, you can offer simple things that you like, but in the temple, we offer to Krishna things that he likes. So that's really important. Tabeyara nari kela samskara karaila parama pavitrkare bhoga lagila. Thereafter, Raghava Pandit had other coconuts gathered, cleansed, and clipped, and with great attention he offered them to the deity to eat. E matakala amranar ranga kantala yaha yadura grame shuniache bala. In this way, from distant villages he collects excellent bananas, mangoes, oranges, jackfruits, and whatever other first-class fruits he has heard about. In other words, he's just thinking, what can I get for Krishna? How can I please Krishna? This is the consciousness of a pure devotee. This is the consciousness of the gopis. They're thinking of Krishna. In the same way, our consciousness, if we really want to be Krishna conscious, we have to think what pleases Krishna. And then we have Prabhupada who tells us what pleases Krishna. What does please Krishna? Well, Krishna says in the Gita, the person who teaches this Bhagavad Gita is most dear to me, and there will never be one more dear than he who teaches Bhagavad Gita. In other words, the person who reaches out and brings people to Krishna. Like Prabhupada said, to bring someone to Krishna, you have to shed gallons and gallons of blood. And it's a fact. But that shedding of gallons of blood is an act of love, an act of compassion. And that is the highest ecstasy in Krishna consciousness. Bahumulya dhyane karyayatana pavitra samskara kare nivedana. All these fruits are collected from distant places and brought at a high price. After trimming them with great care and purity, Raghava Pandit offers them to the deity. E matavyanjanera chaka mula pala e matachidagundu udumma sandesha sakala. Thus, with great care and attention, Raghava Pandit prepares spinach, other vegetables, radishes, fruits, chipped rice, powdered rice, and sweetmeats, sandesh. Sandesh is made with milk, and what you do is you curdle the milk and you roll it. It's been years since I made sandesh. And you roll it and make it very, 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 very smooth, and with some sugar and stuff like that, and it's delicious. Of course, I don't take sugar now. E matapita pana kshirodana parama pavitrahara kare sarvottama. He prepares cake, sweet rice, condensed milk, and everything else with great attention, and the cooking conditions are purified so that the food is first class and delicious for Krishna. Kashumdi achara ariyaneka prakara gandhavastra lankara sarvadravya sara. Raghava Pandit also offers all kinds of pickles such as kashumdi. He offers various scents, garments, ornaments, and the best of everything. So he's actually a gopi in Krishna Lila, and that's what he's thinking of, serving Radha and Krishna in this particular way. That's his eternal service. Mataprameya seva karyanupama yahadeki sarvalokera judai yanayana. Thus, Raghava Pandit serves the Lord in an incomparable way. Everyone is very much satisfied just to see him. E bali ragavere koila lingane e mata samanila sarvabhakta gane. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then mercifully embraced Raghava Pandit. The Lord also offered all the other devotees a farewell with similar respect. In other words, as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying farewell to the devotees and sending them back to Bengal from Jagannath Puri, because they only came for 4 months every year, he was glorifying them. He was glorifying what? Their devotion. Now you notice here that when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is glorifying a devotee, he actually says what they did and what need was fulfilled by their activity. It's not just like general glorification. He doesn't say, Raghava Pandit is great. He actually got into details why Raghava Pandit is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful devotee. So, Shivananda Sene Kai Kariya Samana Vasudeva Datera Tumi Kariha Samadana. The Lord also respectfully told Shivananda Sain, take care of Vasudeva Datta very nicely. Paramaudara inho ye dina heya se dine vyaya kare nahi rake sheshe. Vasudeva Datta is very liberal. Every day, whatever income he receives, he spends. He does not keep any balance. Such a great devotee. He just cares about other people. It's not that he spends everything on sense gratification. He spends it for other people and for the Lord's service. Grahasta kayena inho chahiye sanchaya sanchayana kaile kutumba varana nahi haya. Being a householder, Vasudeva Datta needs to save some money. Lord Chaitanya was very practical. He didn't want most people to renounce. He wanted people to live a very practical life in Krishna consciousness. Balanced. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted devotees to be balanced, not fanatic. Because he is not doing so, it is very difficult for him to maintain his family. Ihara garera ayavyaya sabha tomara stane sarakelahana tumikariha samadane. Please take care of Vasudeva Datta's family affairs, become his manager, and make the proper adjustments. So Vasudeva Datta and Shivananda Sain were living in the same neighborhood, which is presently called Kumarahatta or Halisahara. Prativarshe amara sava bhakta ganalana gundi chaya asibe sabhaya palana kariya. Come every year and bring all the devotees with you to the Gundicha festival. I also request you to maintain all of them. So he's speaking to Shivananda Sain. Shivananda Sain was a businessman. He had wherewithal. So he was actually maintaining all the devotees on the way to Jagannath Puri, and even maintained, as we're going to hear later on, a dog that followed them. He was very attentive to the needs of all living entities, and that's a Vaishnava. Kulina gramire kai samana kariya prajabda sibe atraya patadori lana. The Lord then, with great respect, extended an invitation to all the inhabitants of Kulinagram, asking them to come every year and bring silken rope to carry Lord Jagannath during the Rath Yatra festival. Gunaraja Kana Kaila Sri Krishna Vijaya Tahanika Vakya Tanrache Prema Moya. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then said, Gunaraja Khan of Kulinagram compiled a book named Sri Krishna Vijaya, in which there is a sentence revealing the author's ecstatic love of Krishna. Prabhupada comments that Sri Krishna Vijaya is a book of poems considered to be the first poetry book written in Bengal. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur states that this book was begun in the year 1395 Shakhabda, that's AD 1473. After 7 years, it was completed in 1402 Shakhabda. This book was written in plain language and even half-educated Bengalis, and women could read it very clearly. Even ordinary men with little knowledge of the alphabet could read this book and understand it. Its language is not very ornamental, and sometimes the poetry is not very sweet to hear. Although, according to the sonnet style, each line should contain 14 syllables, there are sometimes 16, 12, or 13 syllables in his verse. Many words used in those days could be understood only by local inhabitants, yet this book is still so popular that no bookstore is complete without it. It is very valuable for those who are interested in advancing in Krishna consciousness. Wow, I'd like to read that book. Sri Gunaraja Khan was one of the topmost Vaishnavas, and he translated the 10th and 11th cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam for the understanding of the common man. The book Sri Krishna Vijaya was highly praised by Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, and it is very valuable for all Vaishnavas. Srila Bhakti Saraswati Thakura gives a genealogical table and family history of Gunaraja Khan. When a Bengali emperor named Adishura first came from Kanya Kubja or Kanauj, he brought with him 5 brahmanas and 5 kayastas. Since the king is supposed to be accompanied by his associates, the brahmanas accompanied the king to help him in higher spiritual matters. The kayastas were to render other services. In the northern Indian high country, the kayastas are accepted as shudras, but in Bengal, the kayastas are considered among the higher castes. It is a fact that the kayastas came to Bengal from northern India, specifically from Kanya Kubja or Kanauj. Srila Bhakti Saraswati Thakur says that the kayastas who came from Kanya Kubja were high-class men. Of them, Dasharatha Vasu was a great personality, and the 13th generation of his family included Gunaraja Khan. His real name was Maladhara Vasu, but the title Khan was given to him by the Emperor of Bengal, thus he became known as Gunaraja Khan. Bhaktisaranta Saraswati Thakur gives the following genealogical table of Gunaraja Khan. 1 Dasharatha Vasu, 2 Kushala, 3 Shubha Shankara, 4 Hansa, 5 Shakti Rama Abhaganda, Mukti Rama Mainagara, and Alankara Bangaja. 6 Damodara, 7 Antarama, 8 Guni Nayaka, and Vinanayaka. The 12th generation included Bhagirath, and the 13th Maladhara Vasu or Gunaraja Khan. Sri Gunaraja Khan had 14 sons, of whom the second son, Lakshminatha Vasu, received this title, Satyaraja Khan. His son was Sri Ramananda Vasu, therefore Ramananda Vasu belonged to the 15th generation. Gunaraja Khan was a very well-known and wealthy man. His palace, fort, and temples are still existing, and from these we can deduce that the opulence of Gunaraja Khan was certainly very great. Sri Gunaraja Khan never cared for the artificial aristocracy introduced by Balal Sena. So here Prabhupada is glorifying, repeating the words of his spiritual master, Srila Bhakti Saraswati Thakur. He's glorifying this great devotee Gunaraja Khan, who appeared before Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Whoops. Let's go back to the Bengali. Nanda Nandana Krishna Mora Prananath Evakyev Kainu Tanra Vamshirahata. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Krishna, the son of Nanda Maharaj, is my life and soul. By this statement, I am sold into the hands of the descendants of Gunaraja Khan. So obviously those are the statements of Gunaraja Khan. The full verse referred to here is E Bhavivanda Hari Yoda Kari Hata Nanda Nandana Krishna Mora Prananata. With folded hands I offer my prayers unto Krishna, Nanda Maharaj's son, who is my life and soul. Tomara ki katha, tomara gramera kukura, se mora priya anyak jana rahu dura. To say nothing of you, even a dog living in your village is very dear to me. What then to speak of others? Tavi Ramananda Hara Satyaraja Kana Prabhura Chandane Kichu Nakaila Nivedana. After this, Ramananda Vasu and Satyaraja Khan both submitted questions at the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Grahasta Vishayami Kimora Sadhane Shri Mukhe Agyakara Prabhu Nivedi Chadane. Satyaraja Khan said, "My dear Lord, being a householder and a materialistic man, I do not know the process of advancing in spiritual life. I therefore submit myself unto your lotus feet and request you to give me orders." Prabhu Kahina Krishna Seva Vaishnava Sevana Nirantarakara Krishna Nama Sankirtana. This is an instruction for grahastas, of course. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, "Without cessation, continue chanting the holy name of Lord Krishna whenever possible. Serve him and his devotees, the Vaishnavas. Sacharaja Bale Vaishnava Chini Ba Kimane Ke Vaishnava Ikaha Tandra Samanya Lakshane." Upon hearing this, Satyaraja said, "How can I recognize a Vaishnava? Please let me know what a Vaishnava is. What are his common symptoms?" This is actually a really good question. Prabhu Kahi Yandramuke Shuniyeka Vara Krishna Nama Se Puja Shrestha Sabhakara. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, "Whoever chants the holy name of Krishna just once is worshipable and is the topmost human being." So we should remember this. Just once they chant Krishna's name, we should never, never offend them. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that a person who simply chants the holy name of Krishna once becomes perfect and should be regarded as a Vaishnava. Wow. So we're actually coming in touch with so many people at the university here, and they're chanting Krishna's name under our direction, and they're going to become Vaishnavas. This is confirmed by Srila Rupa Goswami in his Upadeshamrita, number 5. Krishneti asya giritam manasadriyeta. With such faith in the holy name, one may begin a life of Krishna consciousness, but an ordinary person cannot chant the holy name of Krishna with such faith. One should accept the holy name of Krishna to be identical with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Transcendence Himself. As the Padma Purana states, the holy name of Krishna is identical with Krishna and is like a Chintamani gem, a touchstone. That's Nama Chintamani Krishna's Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha, etc. That name from the Padma Purana. That name is Krishna personified in sound and therefore perfectly transcendental and eternally liberated from material contamination. Thus one should understand the name Krishna and Krishna himself are identical. Having such faith, one must continue to chant the holy name. When one is situated on the neophyte platform, one cannot understand the devotional ingredients of a pure unalloyed devotee. However, when the novice engages in devotional service, especially in deity worship, and follows the order of a bona fide spiritual master, he is a pure devotee. Wow. Follows the order of a bona fide spiritual master is a pure devotee. Anyone can take advantage of hearing about Krishna consciousness from such a devotee and thus gradually become purified. In other words, any devotee who believes that the holy name of the Lord is identical with the Lord is a pure devotee, even though he may be in the neophyte stage. By his association, others may also become Vaishnavas. One is known as a materialistic devotee if he simply worships the deity of Hari with faith, but does not show respect to the devotees and to others. This is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 11.2.47. Acharyam eva harye pucham ya shrayaye hate natod bhakteshu chanyeshu sabhakta prakrata smitaha. Yet even by associating with such a neophyte devotee, one can become a devotee also. When Lord Chaitanya was teaching Sanatana Goswami, he said, Shadavan janahaya bhakti adhikari uttama majjhima kanishta shraddha anusari. I think we should probably continue here at this point tomorrow, because this is quite a large purport, and I think there's some subject matters I'd like to talk about. Let me just take a look this up. Shadavan is where we start, and let's see, it's quite a large purport. Wow. Okay. So it's text 106, 106 in the middle. Okay, so now we're going to take some questions from all of you. We're going to stop sharing. We're going to allow you to unmute yourselves and speak now or forever hold your peace. You can type in your question, you can speak your question, you can raise your hand, and I can call on you. Any one of those three options. So, who has a question? Nobody has a question. Pretty good. Okay, Sumuka has a question. Okay, what's your
Yes.
question, Sumuka?
Gurudev, please accept my humble obeisances. I want to ask you about Lord Ram. Uh,
Yeah,
when we worship the deity in the temple, Prabhupada said to worship Krishna as Rukmini Dwarkadish, like opulent dressing of the deities.
yes.
Uh, and Lord Ram, we see in the palace when he lives in the palace of Ayodhya. Then we
Hmm.
know, we dress him like a king. But we noticed that Lord Ram in the forest, when he was in the forest, he was carrying the bow. So I'm thinking, is he in the forest we worshiping him, or is in the palace we worshiping him? In the
We
palace, I don't
worship
think.
him in the palace, not in the forest. On the altar, at least. We don't
Uh,
put Lord Ram on a boat. We don't put him in the forest. We don't put Ravan on the altar.
uh, okay, so it's
We
like a
have
king.
Hanuman there. We have Hanuman. It's a typical palace picture where we see Lord Ram because Hanuman is bowing down to Sita and Ram, and Lakshman is there with the deities. He's talking about the deities in Suva, of course.
Mhm,
Sita, Ram, Lakshman, Hanuman.
mhm.
And that's a palace mode. Just like we worship Krishna as king, so we worship Ram as emperor, as king too, in that same mood. We don't, I mean, of course, we, in one sense, when we're not doing deity worship, we actually can worship in the forest, in the Dandakaranya forest, fighting Ravan, uh, in different places like that. But uh, on the altar, he's worshipped as a king. Same as Krishna.
Okay.
All
There's
right?
another, yes, there's another question I have, Gurudev. We know, I've heard that when Lord Ram left this material world, he went back to the spiritual kingdom. He said, Hanuman, you remain here.
Yeah.
Okay. So he took the whole other kingdom with him. Now,
Yeah,
question
they
is,
all entered into the Sarayu River and they went
okay,
back to the spiritual world, to Ayodhya in the spiritual world.
okay. The one question comes in my mind. There was a man in the other kingdom who criticized Lord Ram, and uh, and that's the reason
Sita
Lord
was
Ram.
sent away.
Yes. So this man also went back to Godhead.
Yes, Lord Rama's Patita Pavana.
Okay.
Everybody who wanted to go back to Godhead went back to Godhead, including that man. Because they realized their mistake later on. What happened is that when Sita came back
Mhm.
uh, with Valmiki Muni, and Lord Ram said, Sita, you should attest to the fact that you've been chased. She got so upset that she called for the earth goddess to take
Mhm.
her away. And when that happened, that convinced everybody about Sita's chastity. And at that point, all those who had doubted Sita begged for forgiveness. And because Sita and Ram are Patita Pavana Sita Ram, Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram, because they're saviors of the most fallen, then they were forgiven and then they were taken back to Godhead by Lord Ram. Yes, even the person, even the
Uh,
person who criticized Lord Ram.
can I ask another question about Ram?
Actually, the
Yes.
question is, the man came to the laundry man of Kamsa that Krishna killed. Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur said that. That's interesting.
Yes, Maharaj.
That's interesting. I haven't heard that one before. Where did Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur write that?
I have this Vaishnav Tosani. I can, well, this is in Sanskrit and Bengali. I don't know how I can send a
Yeah, I'd like to
picture of it.
read the original. I'd like to see the original writings of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur because is it based in his commentary on the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam?
Sharartha Darshani should have that.
Yeah, yeah, that would be interesting to see that because I never heard that before. I never heard that before. Okay, thank you for
Uh,
that.
if I have another question, Gurudev.
Yeah,
We know that in Ramayana that Lord Ravan, sorry, King Ravan kidnapped Mother Sita, and that Sita was Maya Sita.
yeah,
So Maya Sita was in Lanka for so many 2 years like that. So when that was Maya Sita, and when when Hanuman went to meet Sita in the Lanka, he met Maya Sita.
yeah. That was Maya Sita. The real Sita was never in Lanka.
Okay.
It was always Maya Sita because the Maya Sita was exchanged with the real Sita, and Agni took the real Sita away before the kidnapping.
Mhm.
Because, as Prabhupada explains, that Ravan could never have touched the real Sita. Had he touched the real Sita, he would have died immediately. There was no question about that. So, in order for the pastime to take place, the Maya Sita had to be the one kidnapped rather than the real Sita.
Mhm.
Okay?
Okay, understood. Thank you, Gurudev.
Okay, here's another question. Hari Krishna Maharaj. How to reconcile the point? In temple worship is done under strict rules and regulations, yes. Uh, and and will this not hamper the development of pure Raganuga Bhakti? No. Pure Raganuga Bhakti is done in the heart. Uh, it's not that one breaks the rules and regulations. Actually, someone who is actually engaged in pure Raganuga Bhakti will be more strict with the rules and regulations. The reason for that is yad yad achariti shreshtas tat tat evetaro janaha. The reason for that is because the person wants to set a good example and not mislead people. So, uh, so the pure Raganuga Bhakti is done in the heart. One's doing things spontaneously, but one still follows the rules and regulations. Like Srila Prabhupada, he was very strict with the rules and regulations. Of course, there are a few examples of avadutas too. Avaduta is someone who is like the wind, like Lord Nityananda, for example. And Prabhupada said that we should not follow that example, uh, that particular example. We should actually not imitate these great devotees when they do show some signs of ecstasy or apparently, uh, like Bamsi Das Babaji, apparently do things that are extremely questionable, which are not because they're on a higher spiritual platform. Or when Raghunandana offers things to the deities with a stick in his hand, either crying or threatening the deities, one should not do that. But the way we cultivate Raganuga Bhakti is internally. Internally. We don't change our external behavior. Prabhupada never wanted that. Actually, Prabhupada and Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur wanted to stress on bringing people to Krishna consciousness. And if you manifest your Raganuga Bhakti or Bhava Bhakti or Prema Bhakti externally, it will actually take people away from Krishna consciousness. It's counterproductive. So, many times I see devotees who are, quote, very advanced in devotional service, and they get into these different groups where they so-called cultivate the higher aspects of bhakti, and they go to the programs where there's stories about the gopis being told and everything like that. And that's really not Lord Chaitanya's mood. Lord Chaitanya's mood is that he only discussed these things very intimately. It's very small, 3.5 people, 4 people actually, 4 people that he discussed these things with. And with everybody else, it was, chant Hare Krishna. And he set a good example. Of course, he did show his symptoms of ecstasy at the end. I understand that. But his discussions were not like many of the discussions I hear about nowadays. Because this, basically, even if we are on the platform where we can deal with these discussions or these topics, it's done very intimately, not open programs. Prabhupada would never, never, never approve of such a thing like this. Never, 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 never approve of open programs. And it's done, it's just done. I mean, if you read Jaiva Dharma, for example, you don't see any open programs in Jaiva Dharma. You see that the different gurus are also dealing with different disciples according to their rasa. Even for dealing with different pure devotees, there's actually different dealings privately with different pure devotees. And that's one of the things we learn from reading Jaiva Dharma. Even when people are following the process of cultivating their rasa with Krishna, it's different people in private situations with different devotees rather than open situation like that. All right, let's see. What does it mean that we should not imitate Raghava Pandit? That's a good question. We should not be so fanatic with the cleanliness. That's one thing. Unless we are actually on that devotional platform, we should do it best we can. And also, another way you understand is not imitate him on the material platform, or else you'll be considered obsessive compulsive, like someone who washes their hands all the time until the skin comes off. Because to imitate him materially would mean obsessive compulsiveness. Here's another one. Hare Krishna Maharaj is there in Vrindavan. Krishna stays as Caitanya Mahaprabhu, or just in the spiritual world. There's a place in the spiritual world in Goloka Vrindavan, Mayapur, Navadvip, in Goloka Vrindavan, where Lord Chaitanya is there. Yeah, Lord Chaitanya is in the spiritual world and comes to this material world once in a day of Lord Brahma. So you got to wait a long time, but you're fortunate. He appeared a little over 500 years ago. So, but if you want to wait until he comes into this world, you got to wait a long time. Okay, here's one. Hare Krishna Gurudev, please allow. What to do with the people who came to a theater play in Radhasmi and were interested in learning more about Krishna consciousness, but after they came to Bhagavad Gita classes didn't show up again? It means whoever was preaching didn't know how to present Krishna consciousness to them, because there's a way of explaining Srimati Radharani's position. It's not that we avoid Srimati Radharani or explaining about her position, but there's an expert preacher can talk about Srimati Radharani, which I did on Radhastami without getting into any intimate details. And that was Prabhupada's mood. Why? I mean, Prabhupada obviously is absorbed in all sorts of details about Radha and Krishna internally. There's no doubt about it. Prabhupada was very protective, and he understood the general talks about these things would actually create a cheap mood in the devotees. But there is a way to explain about Radharani. It's not a problem. It's not a problem. It's not that we just have to give a general Bhagavad Gita class. That's not really what I would do on Radhastami. Although Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, when he went to Radha Kund, he spoke about basic ABC Krishna consciousness, and the Babajis were fried. They were fried because they went to the class and they thought, Radhe, 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 Radhe. And instead of Radhe, 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 he spoke about basic principles of Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada, you see, when Prabhupada gave his classes at the Radha Damodara temple, Prabhupada gives classes on the nectar of devotion, the basic aspects of nectar of devotion, and but it's very sweet. So an expert devotee knows how to make the basic topics, or the what we call the ontology. That's a big word. The tattva, sorry, that's a Sanskrit word, and sambandha, avideya, and prayojana, applicable and to most people. But unfortunately, there's been a predominance of other things going on that even if people are qualified, the vast majority of people will actually not understand things in the proper way and not understand the mission of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Because the mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is twofold. It is actually to understand the love that Radharani feels for Krishna and see Krishna. Anyway, to understand Radha Krishna loving affairs, but also connected with that is bring the mass of people into the chanting of the holy names, into Krishna consciousness. So one should not preclude the other. In other words, it should be presented so expertly that we are not driving people away from Krishna in the name of intimate Krishna consciousness. We do, that happens sometimes. We mislead people, and they actually don't come to a proper understanding of Radha and Krishna's loving affairs. So this is very, very dangerous. Okay, so on that happy note, we will see everybody tomorrow evening. All glories to His